How's everybody doing tonight? Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Welcome to A Raging Atheist, a channel brought to you by our friend Nokasuchi, who is with us tonight. We are going to talk tonight about abduction and inference to the best explanation. A very good topic, and a topic that I am so glad that Socka is here for, because if it was just me and Richard and Nock, then it would be about a 15-minute stream. So, but one thing I want to say right off the bat, you may have noticed that I posted a link in the live chat. Our friend Puffalopagus, Kyle, is he is woefully short on his goal to come up with the funds to bury his father, who died like a week and a half ago. And actually, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow. So if you can, please check that GoFundMe out and help with what you can. And I realize that there's been a lot of those going around in the community the last few months, but his dad died suddenly and had not taken the preliminary steps to set up for his funeral. And it's really putting hardship on Puffalopagus and his family. In addition, to help if you can, and even if you can't help, please share that GoFundMe link on social media. If you are able to give them a few bucks and then you share it on social media with several people, you can exponentially grow your donation, by sharing it around. So please check that out. I will post that link in the live chat several times tonight and mention it a few more times. And the link will also be in the video description once the stream is over. As I said, we're going to talk tonight about abduction, and I will introduce our guests here in a minute. But first, I just need to take a couple minutes. And first of all, I want to praise Richard for his one-on-one stream with Jesus is Lord the other night. After watching that, I'm convinced that Richard is the Jill Whisperer, because he took no guff from Jill, and he took no guff while being very reasonable and gentlemanly and polite, and didn't let Jill get away with his usual shenanigans when he has conversations with people. After that video, we engaged in the comment section, and I had posted a comment because in that stream, Jill had claimed that he had claimed that the Bible is self-interpretive. It interprets itself. And Richard spent several minutes trying to explain to him why that was nonsense. Okay, that essentially if something is self-interpretive, then it needs no interpretation and everyone should understand it. And Jill just wouldn't get it, and I put a comment in the comment section, self-interpretive and laws or whatever the hell it was I put. And then so Joe engaged me in that thread. And during the course of our exchange, he was telling me to study the Bible. And I informed him that I was a Christian for 35 years and I was very familiar with the Bible. And then he came back at me, and in not so many words, he said that I was never a Christian.
Oh, you got that, John? Oh, I get that every day.
Yeah, basically the no true Scotsman fallacy. And then I called him out on it, and he came back with, well, no, that's I'm not using a no true Scotsman. Now, there's a couple of problems with his claim that I was never a Christian. Okay, one, there are how many interpretations of Christianity in the world? Thousands. So who is he to say who has the right interpretation of Christianity? Two, he knows nothing of me when I was a Christian. He doesn't know has no idea what I believed when I was a Christian. He has no idea what doctrines I followed. He has no idea what denomination I belong to. And he also, for all he knows, I believed everything he does when I was a Christian. So he's claiming I was never a Christian based on zero evidence. He's basically saying that because I'm not a Christian now, I never was. So if anybody runs into Jill, please explain the no true Scotsman fallacy to him. And just 1 second, Nokasuchi. I apologize. I'm kind of.
Oh no, go for it. It's your show. I was going to just add 2.5.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. Also in that comment thread, Jill challenged me to a live stream debate. And I said to him, I have no problem doing that. I only have two stipulations. One, it doesn't occur on your channel. And two, we have a female moderator. Now, he didn't respond directly to my stipulation of a female moderator, but we all know Jill is never going to do a live stream with a female moderator. Now, I didn't put that stipulation in there to prevent him from doing the debate. He has every opportunity to do that debate. All he has to do is set aside his misogyny that he has displayed numerous times on this channel in the comment section and in Hangouts that he's taken part in.
In Hangouts as well. Yeah, good point.
So that's my little 2 cents. Go ahead if you had something to say about it.
Well, I was just going to add fact 2.5 is that Jill's interpretation of the Bible is fucking wrong.
And then now we can move on to the title conversation, unless Socka or Richard have anything to say about what I was just talking about. Either one of you. Richard's giving me the thumbs down.
Well, I will say, Jill, I'm highly disappointed that you didn't show up for the conversation when I was going to allow just Christians to pile up on me. And I have to assume that you didn't show up because Allie was the moderator. And I have to assume that part of that was because she's a woman. But I also have to assume that part of that is because you knew Allie would rip you a new fucking asshole, you cowardly bitch. But I'm done with Jill.
All right. Socka, any last words on this topic?
Yeah, the no true Scotsman fallacy, as well as defining what a Christian is. That's an interesting one that could be the next topic for our show.
Yes, it very well could. And the funny thing is in that thread we were engaging in, Jill suggested to me that I needed to familiarize myself with what the No True Scotsman truly is. And he said I should go watch a video he did about it on his channel. I of course, declined the offer. Something else, so just real quick, too, something that I found humorous, too, is when he was trying to explain to me why I was wrong and he was right. He said something to the effect of, well, so is it wrong to claim that somebody is not a true Scotsman if they weren't born in Scotland? And I responded, well, look, Scottish heritage really has nothing to do with the no true Scotsman fallacy. But since you asked, you dummy, a person could be a Scotsman without having been born in Scotland. I mean, what the fuck, man? I mean, I'm like, you don't get that? Like, but anyway, let's move on.
He's so stupid. Real quick, John, there's overwhelming consensus in the chat that Nokasuchi should probably be a moderator.
Oh, yeah, I can take. Well, no.
Since I'm not on the Raging Atheist account, I can't make myself a moderator. So yeah,
I'm not, and you don't have access to that in Streamlab. When you're in StreamYard, you can't. There is no 3 dots to click.
And I'm totally joking. You don't have to. It's kind of cool that I'm not. But they were fucking around in live chat.
Damn it! Wednesday nights are my takeover. All right.
I know.
Anyway, I got super chat here up on the screen from our good friend Maynard Saves. Richard schooled Jill. Bravo, good conversation, and he did school Jill for sure. And if Allie's still here, let me know if I missed any other super chats. I don't think I did. Prior to this one, I mean. And Barney,
I am keeping an eye on the actual chat, John. So if I see one, I'll let you know.
So just out of interesting, Barney Tearspell says, at Nokasuchi, is there anyone whose interpretation of the Bible is right?
My answer was maybe God is gray.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how you would determine which one is right. So, all right. Tonight's conversation is abduction and inference to the best explanation. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Socka is the leading expert on this panel about this, and then maybe Drag knows more about it than me, Richard, and Nokasuchi as well, and he will be here soon. He's running late and still in class. So let me just introduce everybody, and then we're going to kick it over to Socka to start things off and frame the conversation. And so welcome, Nokasuchi.
Oh, yeah. What's up, man?
What's it feel like to be a guest on your own channel, man?
Second week in a row. This is kind of getting weird. I have a feeling that next Wednesday I probably will be working, but yeah, glad to be here. Different being on the guest side of StreamYard. I'm finding out. Unfortunately, don't like it so much, but yeah, like I've got a lot of shit going on. So last night, Richard, and I recorded some Patreon shits after my streams with Richard and that Christian vlogger, but of course I didn't have my settings correct. So both of those recordings gone. No Patreon recordings coming for you guys. I do have tomorrow's video up on Patreon, and then hopefully after the stream today, I will get my settings right and we can record a little something with the guest tonight for Patreon. So unfortunately, both of those mini interviews after the shows yesterday didn't work out. So you won't be seeing those on Patreon, but there will be coming very soon. And I just have to keep reminding myself that I got to change my settings. Outside of that, next Tuesday, I'll be on In Time with Nick Suter and Angsgar Odinson. September 19th, I'm filming with Utah Outcast for their week's worth of content. And then October 28th, I'll be on Neil the 604 Atheist channel doing my deconversion story. So lots of videos, lots of live streams, lots of appearances by your boy. Thanks, John.
Is there anything else on the 19th you're going to be doing?
Oh, what am I forgetting? Like oh, yeah, the GDC. I will be on the GDC Saturday the 19th. If I can get the night off of work. It's kind of up in the air whether I'll actually be able to get that night off, John. I'm hoping to get that night off, and I'm hoping to be on the GDC the night.
I thought you were saying you had to take it off for the Utah.
I was trying to, and I'm getting some resistance because I'm me and they want me there. So hopefully I get it off.
All right. So real quick before we go to Richard and Socka, hey Barney, there's an open chair if you want in.
Oh yeah, please come on.
Tag a raging atheist in the live chat so that either me or him sees it. And I will send you a link. So, and we also have with us tonight Richard Madsen from Demolished Doctrine. How you doing tonight, Richard?
Doing great, John. Peace and respect to you all. I very much look forward to the day that we're all great friends. And that's not a trope. I really mean it. I say it a lot, but I really mean it. Two things. Patreons. If Nokasuchi wants to do a special short recording so that he can keep his promise to you, I'm up for that. And Puffalopagus. Guys, if you've ever lost somebody, look, it'd be real easy. Just give up one pizza this month for Puffalopagus, please. Okay, so Demolished Doctrine is exactly what it sounds like. I'm trying to show that the doctrinal views of spiritual texts are out of context, do not make sense to reality, and cannot be proven. Whereas the view that I've adopted, which is a very strange view, I freely admit, which I did not invent but was just handed to me, actually comports with reality. That's it, John. Thank you very much.
All right, Richard, thank you. And last but not least, Socka Count, please tell us whatever you opening things you want to say about yourself, and then just kick this conversation off for us.
I'm I don't know. I'm a YouTube loudmouth. I just I love going to people's channels. I love talking about stuff. I'm here for the discussion. The basic kind of disclaimer that I always put out there is that I'm not a professional in this. I am a sailor by trade, so that's quite far away from anything philosophy related. So if you think that what I'm saying is wrong, look into it. I encourage people to read up on some of these topics. If you guys want any type of references or any stuff that I've kind of followed along with, just ask. But yeah, don't take anything I say as from a position of authority. A lot of this is just stuff that I've read on my own, and that I'm trying my best to articulate without sounding like a complete idiot. I'm usually I would try to get on camera for stuff like this. I can't. I'm on my mobile, and I'm going to be tending to my kids and making dinner and a bunch of other stuff, all while trying to carry on this conversation. So it's going to be a really cool juggling act here. Yeah, that's what it is.
A juggling sock. I want your next avatar to be a sock that's juggling shit. All right. So again, the topic's abduction and best inference, the best explanation. And I had actually was kicking around a different topic, and then Socka explained to me why that was horseshit, and then he suggested this one. So as I said, I'm going to allow Socka to kick things off. So go ahead, Socka, lead us down the primrose path.
It wasn't a shit topic. It was just it was a topic that could either be resolved very quickly or over a very long period of time with the audience yelling and screaming at us. But following up the reliabilism versus justified true belief, and getting into the topic of defining what truth is. That's always a fun one. But anyway, so abduction, okay? The act of taking people against their will is not what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about abductive inferences. Okay, that was my dad joke for the day. A lot of times, when we get into these discussions, we hear people refer to deductive arguments or inductive arguments. But there's another category is that as well, abductive arguments. And with abduction, it kind of falls similar in lines with induction. Now, a lot of people will take a look at things like inductive arguments, which could be phrased in kind of a probabilistic means. Like every single thing of A I've seen has been C. Therefore, the next time I see an A, it's also going to have the characteristic of C. That would be kind of like an example of just inductive arguments. So you hear this a lot with the white swan analogy for describing inductive arguments and how inductive arguments can fail. Because the inductive arguments don't get you to truth. They get you to they're to certainty. They get you to probabilistic outcomes. But even within induction, there's this kind of notion that kind of relates to causation. So you could form kind of an inductive argument saying that whenever A happens, B happens. So therefore, the next time that A happens, it is most likely that B will happen again. And that's an inductive inference that you can draw from something like that. But abduction will approach those same type of questions in a different way. What they do is they ask, why is it that when A happens, B happens? The abductive arguments are always about looking for an explanation. Okay, so that's the main thing that kind of will separate them from an inductive argument. So an inductive argument will just basically go off kind of like the raw data. This happens, then this happens. You can try to form an argument off that alone. But abductive arguments will be more along the lines of instead of trying to base something off of probability, you're looking for something that has some sort of explanatory value to it. So like an abductive argument would be phrased like, if my conclusion was true, then it explains all my premises. So there's this weird kind of like, if you take like a type of like syllogistic argument, you'd start off with the premises and then you get to your conclusion. With abductive arguments, it kind of works kind of both ways. The conclusion is only good if it explains what the premises are. But the strength of these abductive inferences is essentially saying that the conclusion of these arguments would be a good explanation for all the premises that you're laying out. And this is where we get to what we call things like the inference of the best explanation. So kind of as an example of this, when we're trying to form an abductive argument, we start off with the observation. We'll observe a phenomenon of some sort, or even like a set of phenomena. And then we form a hypothesis that explains the phenomenon or the phenomena that we see. And if the explanation of that hypothesis explains all of the premises, all the phenomena, then we can say that it's likely that it will be true. Now, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying here is probably pretty common sense to most people. Like, that we do this all the time. We come up with these solutions to things. Like we make our own abductive references all when dealing with anything. So the best way to kind of there's two ways that I like to kind of explain like abductive references, and that's first off like Sherlock Holmes is a great example of a character who is a lot of the stuff that like his crime fighting or crime solving technique is purely based off of abductive reasoning. That you take the little observations that he'll see, the chalk on the side of the pants, mustard stain on the sleeve, the wrinkle in the suit, and then take all of these different kind of observed phenomena and manages to come up with whatever the best explanation would be that would account for all those things. Now that's like high tier shit. Most people can't do that because we don't have a lot of the background knowledge to make all those type of inferences. Well, a character like Sherlock Holmes spends his entire life collecting all the useless knowledge that he kind of put all that stuff together just in case, he needs to know this at one point in time. The other way that we can kind of easily kind of demonstrate or see like abductive arguments, or I'm sorry, abductive inferences, is when dealing with kids. Like kids, if for people that have, if they do something wrong, if they break something, they're going to lie about it. It's just natural. It's what kids do. Kids make up stories, they lie, but they don't have a lot of the worldly knowledge that other people have. So you can easily recognize when a kid's lying because it just doesn't make sense. That they're laying out their conclusion that they're coming to doesn't generally account for all the phenomena that you're observing. So like you could you use that as kind of an example of how we use these abductive inferences. But one of the things is when we do these abductive inferences, like I said, we're trying to find this explanation, and that explanation is what we would refer to as like the inference to the best explanation. So the best conclusion in a abductive argument is always going to be the best explanation. Now, when
presented with a list of possible explanations,
right? Yeah. So because we're talking about the best explanation, we're assuming that there are multiple explanations in which we draw from, and so that because of that we have to figure out a way to evaluate a series of explanations. And so this is the part that I really like. It's the fun part. It is what is it about an explanation that makes it good? Like what's a good explanation compared to a bad explanation? I think that most of us can recognize them. The example that I use all the time, I think I've used it even on this channel before, is that you lend your car to somebody and they come back and there's like a dent in the side of the passenger side door, just a parking lot ding. And you know, you ask your friend, just like, well, what happened to the door? And then they can give you an infinite amount of explanations. You know, they can say that, well, I guess I parked too close to the person beside me. They opened the door and probably dented it. Yeah, that's an explanation. But so is, well, maybe some, you know, door dinging fairies came along with a little hammer and hit in the side of the door as well. And that's also an explanation. But every single person that's probably listening to this can evaluate this as like say like, well, that's not a good explanation. And I think that what's the interesting topic here is really trying to dive into what a good explanation is. And this is where we get into the problem with philosophy, which is, you know, like we've talked about this with things like truth and knowledge, and then these other terms that there's these concepts aren't actually, there's no universal kind of agreement on what this is. You know, that
yeah, I mean, there really can't be. I mean, so the thing is you can't. The only way you can infer that an explanation is the best explanation is if your criteria for best explanation or explanatory power is solid or not. So I think maybe that's what you're getting to, is you have to have a solid framework of what you're going to call explanatory power or best explanation.
Right. Yeah. And in the discussion over, you know, what characteristics does an explanation have or need to have to be considered a good explanation? How is it that we find that best explanation, the qualities of that? And so there are different theories out there, but the most kind of popular one that's kind of presented, I'm probably going to screw up who it is, because I think it's Mills. I might be wrong though, but he describes the kind of a set of 6: consistency, scope, simplicity, testability, fruitfulness, and conservatism. As the 6 main ones that people look for a good explanation. And so I those are kind of like vague. I kind of unpack them a little bit here, but the idea is that the ones that fit those criteria, or most of those criteria, is always going to be what we're going to say is going to be like the best explanation to something. So I mean. Yeah, I'll just kind of go into them here a little bit. So what was the first one? Consistency. Yeah, consistency is kind of like the main one. That the first thing is that whatever your explanation has to be consistent, obviously, with the phenomenon. That's what we're trying to find out. That you're putting forward something that doesn't have any type of internal contradictions. You're putting forward this idea that doesn't close itself off, that if new phenomena were to arise, that it could also account for those ones. There's the scope, which just means that an explanation that has more explanatory power across multiple phenomena is going to be stronger than one that's just a very narrow one. Like if, this has explanatory power, but only for this one thing in this one situation, compared to something else that might have explanatory power for that phenomena, as well as a multitude of other phenomena. Well, that's, you know, good. Simplicity is where you get into the principle of parsimony, or Occam's razor. Yeah, would probably be a better way to describe that. Yeah, that's when you get into Occam's razor, that you're not making any more claims than the one that you're trying to solve. This is where we get into the idea about multiplying entities. And then you have testability, which is just basically, you know, is whatever you're presenting falsifiable? Okay, like if you could put forward an idea that's unfalsifiable, well, I mean, that is something that's unfalsifiable doesn't really, you know, by definition have any type of explanatory power. Like, you don't really know what's going on there. The fruitfulness, which is that is something that if it makes more novel predictions, that any explanation or hypothesis that makes more novel predictions are going to be better ones than the ones that make fewer. Okay. Now this is weird because this is where it seems to kind of work kind of against simplicity. But really, what it's saying is that if you have something that produces like new lines of questioning, it's different than just saying that you're producing more claims. When you produce more new lines of questioning, it means that you're not stopping at this point. There's more stuff that you can unpack and you can search, you can go into. What they're trying to eliminate is things that just end in a brute fact. So, when you're having a discussion with somebody, and for example, with theists, and they're giving an explanation for morality, and they get down to well, God is good, and they go, why is God good? And they say, well, just God is good. They just say that's it. It just ends as a brute fact. Well, that doesn't really offer much for an explanation. You can just pretty much assert anything that just ends at a brute fact like that. And then finally, what was the last one? Conservatism. This is just basically just the coherency of the entire idea. Is that when you come up with a new explanation for something, that it's coherent with prior theories that you have, prior stuff that prior stuff that you've observed. You're just trying to make sure that the collection of everything that you have just kind of coheres in a nice kind of a package there. So whatever the inference to the best explanation is going to be something that has all or most of these kind of characteristics. And what I find fascinating about abductive inferences or any type of abductive argument is that it's very kind of raw kind of natural way of how we already think about the world. And so when we offer things as explanations, this is the stuff that we kind of already going towards. And even if you couldn't articulate it at the time, when you kind of unpack it and you take a listen to those points right there, you get this idea of what it means for something to be a good explanation. And because we're on a Raging Atheist channel, and because this is kind of the scope of what we're talking about, one of the interesting things I find with abductive inferences or any type of abductive argumentation is that when it applied to theological claims, well, they tend to fail. Now, this isn't to say that that they don't take a hard stance and say gods don't exist. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that when applied as a type of abductive argument to offer to something as an explanation, that if you're looking for something that is going to be evidence for your views, you're looking for how is the world created, how was man created, you're asking these questions, and a theist is going to be putting forward explanations, and these explanations are always going to be grounded in whatever their theological views are. But when you take those explanations and you put it through the criteria of what makes a good explanation, well, how many points is a theistic argument actually hitting? Off the top of my head, falsifiability, falls pretty much, on its face. Coherence, I mean, especially for the young Earth creationists, we have so many theories about things like radiometric dating, and there's nothing within their view that kind of coheres with all these theories and stuff that we already do know. There's tons of things that you can point up in objection to theistic arguments just off of abduction alone. And the reason why I bring this up is because most theistic arguments, tend to be phrased in some type of abductive way, because they're always offering explanations for something. Explanations for morality, explanations for creation, explanations for whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. But this is the field in which a lot of these arguments are coming from, or a lot of the claims that we start to make.
And when you talk about a lot of the theistic arguments, they're poorly constructed abductive arguments, because it seems like they don't necessarily, they're not so much looking for the best explanation as claiming that the explanation they have is the best one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or a lot of times they're just apologizing because their explanation is shit.
Richard, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I got a lot to say, but I suppose I'd wait my turn.
Well, no, I mean,
I'm just talking till somebody fucking interrupts me.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, to start it off. So yesterday John told me the topic, and he told me Richard Madsen's going to be joining us. So when I looked at the topic, abduction and inference to the best explanation, I literally thought we were talking alien abductions and the best explanation for those. So yeah, I'm fucking lost. But I'm glad that I'm here because this is like the philosophy I'm trying to get into, and yeah, I think I have some points to make, but I'm going to listen for a little bit longer.
I think it's very interesting that everything that just Socka was just saying, I can see that the argument that I'm making, which most Christians are not, okay, all Christians I'm aware of except for me are not making, or they're making very, very poorly, that what I've adopted as my view of spiritual text, it appears to me at least, which is why I have these conversations with people more intelligent than I am, like you gentlemen here. It seems to me that it has all those aspects that you described a good argument should have, and not even missing any of them, which I find very, very interesting. I think that I've been talking about those things in a loose way, but not really having it defined like you just defined it. That was really super clear and understandable. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and like the major thing that I took from it is like, so like when Jill in Praise comes and says that slavery isn't in the Bible, that's not abductive reasoning whatsoever. Like, you have no fucking evidence. You know, there's nothing behind that outside of you pushing bullshit. So yeah, I think I've got a fairly good idea based on Sokka's explanation of abductive reasoning, inference. I think I've got it down. Definitely not a part of philosophy I've gotten to yet, though.
So let's just take a moment and just back up a little bit and maybe just review some of the bullet points. Okay, so and then we'll let Socka continue with what he was saying. So abduction, under certain definitions of it, can be considered, as he said, in part of induction, a form of an inductive argument. But the distinction between the deduction says that the premises claim to necessitate the conclusion. So if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. There's no getting around it. If it's a valid and sound deductive argument, and if the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true. In induction, the premises claim to improve the likelihood of the conclusion. And so, and so you get into how can you distinguish between induction and abduction, because under that definition, then an abductive argument would be a type of inductive argument. So
I think that the main thing that kind of separates them is that when you form an inductive argument, you're looking at you're basing your outcome purely on probability alone, and that's going to be off of a lot of other things. So you could have like, how do you know that the sun's going to rise tomorrow? With 100% certainty. Well, you're not going to get to 100% certainty. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe aliens come from a couple galaxies away and blow up our sun tomorrow. That could happen. Is it going to? Probably not. But absent that happening, we know that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. And now that's just an argument that's going to be phrased in the sense of just probability, because the number of things that can alter that are thought to be fewer than the number of things that are going to guarantee it. With abduction, you could say it's probabilistic in the sense that generally the explanations or the best explanation that explains all observed phenomena, or whatever observed phenomena you're offering a hypothesis for, that when you do have an explanation that does explain all these things and meets the criteria, what we would say would be a good explanation, then more times, then most likely that's going to be what the actual explanation is. So there is that kind of like a similar wording there at the end, because you're only going to get to like the most likely part. But I still think like that's like the big difference between them. And
I mean, one thing I just want to kind of not necessarily disagree with you on, but it's going to sound like I'm disagreeing with you, but more so I'm asking for clarification or your agreement if I'm right. But actually, induction can be based on like statistical data, because like in the example of you drive by 1,000 houses, they're all white, then you can infer that the next house is going to be white, and that's statistical, because you're viewing 1,000 different points of data and deciding what the next point of data is. But abductive arguments are always going to in some fashion be based on their explanatory power. Whereas in induction, they're not necessarily going to examine the explanatory power of the conclusions.
All right, so to put this in context of how I can best understand it.
Well, I want to hear Sokka's response to what I said though first. All
right, go ahead.
I agree.
Okay.
I just thought you're just furthering a point that I was making.
Okay. Well, no, I just wanted to make sure I was getting it right. But if you saying you agree answers my question. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I was just going to say, to put this in a way that I can understand it a little better, maybe people in the chat not so familiar with philosophy. I am studying philosophy right now whenever I get a chance to do so. Not quite ready to go to Dragnauct's channel and converse about it. But so to put this in terms that I can understand. So as an example, when Dr. Josh comes out and lists all the reason why the Bible endorses slavery, and then gives you Bible verse and all of that, he's using abductive reasoning. What reasoning would Jill and Praise be using when they give examples of why the Bible doesn't endorse slavery and then proceed to give a bunch of bullshit? Would that be inductive reasoning?
Well, no, they would be employing cognitive dissonance, is what they employ.
What they'd be doing is, it's not really an abductive argument that Dr. Josh is doing either. Abductive arguments are mostly, like I said, you're looking for explanation. So you're looking for the cause of something. So there has to be like that separation. Like I describe them just as a phenomena, or like an event or something. But there has to be something that happens,
So you're looking for the basically the root cause to be the explanation,
right? I mean, you can take a look at the why is it that Jesus is Lord, or Praise, or whatever, whoever you said there, would deny those things, and you could kind of like try to evaluate what the cause of something like that is. But for like the
I think I got a good understanding of it now. Yeah, I think that puts it into context for me.
So real quick too, I just want to give a shout out to Kent Hovind CPA, who just said in the chat that he's just stopping by for a minute and he can't stay. So just want to recognize that he was here, because he's a big friend of the channel.
Yeah, what's up, Kent Hovind CPA? Wish you could stay longer. And once the Lions start losing, the Chiefs are seriously my team.
So real quick, as far as some of that clarification you want, Nokasuchi, I did, from one of the videos I watched today, I did write down a few example arguments, a few rudimentary, like an example of each one. So like
real quick, totally. Like I thought we were talking alien abductions with Richard. So Had I known that this was going to be a philosophical conversation, I would have made time to watch some videos, John.
And when I saw the thumbnail that you created, I thought you were just doing a play on words when you put abduction up there. I thought
I was literally talking about abductions.
I thought that was your joke. I was laughing at it. I was like, oh, Naka's fucking doing that play on words there. Good job, man.
No, yeah, not that smart. Not that smart.
So, all right. So these are the examples they gave, and like the deductive argument. Everybody who has even remotely delved into philosophy has to have heard the example he gave for the deductive argument. And then the other two are just variations on this one that everybody's heard. Okay, this would be a deductive argument. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. You know, the conclusion follows from the premises, and the premises they necessitate the conclusion.
Well, I also want to point out just with the deductive argument, like, and what would be good is like, how do these things work with how we do kind of learn things? And so one of the things with deductive logic, deductive argument.
But real quick, can I just give these three short examples and then you can go on and then possibly comment on all of them because they're just real short. Okay.
Okay.
And then the example argument that was given that would be inductive using that information. Almost all men are mortal. Like say if Superman existed, we're in a universe where Superman's a real thing. So almost all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. Based on the likelihood out of, all the men in the world that Socrates is not Superman. So that's offering the most probabilistic conclusion. Abductive of that argument would be all the men I met today are mortal. The best explanation of this is all men are mortal. Therefore, all men are mortal. So that's just like a rudimentary example for each one. Go ahead, Socka. And welcome, Dragnauct.
Yeah, so I think that's
still just got out of class.
What's up, Drake?
I'm in the car right now. I've not been able to get anything. I literally just came out of biochem.
Oh, okay. All right, so go ahead, Socka.
Yeah, so we're just kind of like and how we apply these things. Like when we're out kind of like discovering the world, the deduction is really cool, but deduction really doesn't get you anything. It'll get you to certainty. If the premises are true, the conclusion is certain. So providing that your premises are actually true, your conclusion in a deductive argument can't be wrong. But the thing is that with a deductive argument, you don't really learn anything new. You might be able to kind of articulate a point better. You might be able to, like, through a long enough kind of deductive argument, you might be able to get to a point where you can, you might discover something. But the truth of a deductive argument is already in the premises. The Socrates is a man is only true because we already know that all men are mortal. So the statement that you can conclude with that Socrates is mortal, or Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal, is only by virtue of the fact that we already know that all men are mortal. We already agree that premise is true. So a lot of deductive arguments will depend on accepting the premises of those arguments. So a lot of times when people will challenge some type of deductive arguments, they will be like the Kalam, that everything that begins to exist as a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe is a cause. Well, that's a sound argument, but that argument is only going to be valid unless if all the premises are true, and so we can challenge the premise of that argument.
No, you got that backwards, Socka. Valid goes to form, soundness goes to whether the
valid. Yeah, sorry. Valid goes to form, soundness goes to the truth. But thank you. And So with so you can doubt the soundness of that argument if you doubt the whether like the truth of the premises. So you do generally challenge deductive arguments on the premises themselves. Inductive arguments are good. We navigate the world through induction. There's things like we're not walking around constantly, grabbing on things to hold on to just in case gravity stops working. We believe that gravity is going to keep on working because, through induction. But then, like abduction is, you again, you're going to ask questions about what's something that you can observe, and then you're just going to try to explain it that way. So you can see how induction and abduction is actually how we kind of navigate the world and how we kind of come to explanations of why things happen. So those are, two important things that on how we go about kind of discovering the space around us. And there's very little deduction to do with that, really.
Just a word to my good friend Messenger Reveals out there. I mean, if you only came here to troll, why don't you just go pound your pud somewhere, buddy?
I actually like it, John. We need to make this happen. Messenger has a hard on for Socka.
You got some of that comment he made earlier? I was in class that.
Well, and then he seems to have a hard off for me, because I asked Socka to hold off and let me finish what I was saying, that somehow I was going to forget my 3 points. Actually, Messenger, it was notes I had taken on a video I watched earlier, so no way would I have forgotten. They're written right here in front of me, buddy.
And allowing somebody that understands the subject to speak and explain it, I think is the reasonable course of action here. So
right. I mean,
usually,
hold on. What I was going to say is usually, we don't interrupt people like Socka because he knows what the fuck he's talking about, too often. I just, wanted to finish what I was saying. But what the kind of people that we interrupt are people who, I don't know, claim shit like that they have a cure for PTSD. Those are the kind of people that we try and interrupt every couple of minutes when they make nonsense claims like that. Go ahead, Socka.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not going to put the guy down. He's not in here. I've had a couple interactions with Messenger Reveals, and it hasn't really been too enlightening or anything. That's why I really don't pay much mind. Like I said at the beginning, I encourage people, if you're hearing these kind of topics for the first time, then and you find it fascinating, that you're just like shit, this abduction stuff seems so, intuitive, but yet I've never really been able to kind of articulate it. Then, I recommend people go out and, research it themselves, look up some stuff. All that I hope to do or publish through this is kind of set up a basic framework for people to be like, when they're talking about or having a discussion with somebody, they get into a conversation with a theist who starts talking about how, and this has happened with myself personally, is that all things considered, God is the best explanation. And, and a lot of times people will say, they're like, well, no, it's not, but then fail to articulate why it's not the best explanation. And I think that just looking at basic, abductive inferences, you can see that God is never the best answer.
Well,
let me just kind of highlight that point. Why, in my mind, if you're going to cite something like God as an explanation, this is why it fails. Okay. You take a look at all the things I said before. You have something like the testability of something. So, this is the falsifiability part of it. There's no claim that people make about God that's falsifiable. These are just assertions that people put out there with no way to really ground them. Like, how would you demonstrate that, God did this? How, what experiment could we do to test this? Because we're always talking about with an observed phenomena of some sort. We're looking for that explanation, that causation there. And that when we link it to, causal references, It was we have kind of this understanding of causation, but the causation that we talk about, the causation that we always refer to, is stuff that exists in some type of like material realm. We know what when we're talking about causation when it comes to the physical, we know exactly what we're talking about. Right down to the basic physics. That how things interact with each other. These are causal explanations. But the causation, as far as we know, is a physical process. Now, when you're talking about a transcendental being that's immaterial, that doesn't exist in our reality, like they're outside time, outside space, not composed of anything. For them to interact and do anything, you have to be positing some type of supernatural causation. Now, we know what natural causation is. We have an idea about what it means for something, for natural causation to exist, but we have no idea what supernatural causation is. If something was to happen, we couldn't even identify if it was supernatural causation or not. Because right now, what a lot of people do, what a lot of theists will do, is absent an explanation for the physical, they assert the supernatural.
Yeah, and you're so right about that. And a matter of fact, the gentleman we were just talking about, one of the first discussions I had with the Messenger Reveals when I met him was in the comment section of a video, and he essentially made the claim that anything that doesn't have an empirical or scientific explanation can be assumed to be supernatural until a natural explanation is found.
And see, that's
defining of
completely wrong. That's completely wrong. And it's so wrong, it's ludicrous, because we have no examples of the supernatural, that we can draw on in the first place to even assume that a supernatural causation is a thing. If someone says that, it's out of pure ignorance.
Was that an appeal to ignorance, or was he saying that that's the way we view things until we have an explanation? Because he could have meant that two ways.
Yeah, there's no good reason to even assume that that's the way things are. That's the point. Is that it's as far as an explanation goes. He might be saying
exactly what you just said, though. He might be saying, I'm not sure, but he might be saying that supernatural is the explanation we use until we have a real answer.
Well, but even if that were the case, that's still nonsense, because you can't pose an explanation as like a placeholder. Either you have an explanation or you don't.
Yeah. So I did, and Messenger just confirmed something I figured. He has an esoteric definition of supernatural, and so anything that hasn't been firmly grounded within naturalism, he by default puts over into the other category, which if that's how he defines it, then sure, most other people would never do that for obvious reasons. But still, it's an issue when you try to actually take some of these things to the conclusion that people want to try and espouse. And I think Socka earlier, I heard him mentioning the Kalam cosmological argument, but by association, there is another common, younger creationist trope that we hear. And it's intelligent design. And intelligent design, by some permutations, comes across as an abductive argument. I've actually been told by good old true empiricism that for him, it is an abductive argument. Now, from where we are in the conversation, again, which I've not been a part of largely, I'm pretty sure you guys have covered the basics that if you're going to make an abductive argument, you need a precedent. That's what it relies on. It's very much like induction in that manner. You need to establish something to begin with, because if you are asserting, at least in the case of intelligent design, that it is indeed an abductive argument, that because we see intelligent agents creating manifesting physical things in the physical world, then by virtue of other things that we can't explain that seem to have some level of complexity or sophistication, those things must have been designed, such as galaxies, such as rock formations, what have you. Well, the issue is that there's no non-physical intelligent agent to set that precedent. That's the issue, and that's why it's not an abductive argument, but that comes from a misunderstanding of what abduction actually is.
One of the problems is that like I said, so the lack of understanding like all the points is that you can hit like a supernatural or a theistic explanation might be able to, in a limited basis, meet one or two of the criteria of a good explanation, but it's never going to be the best explanation because all things equal, any type of plea to the supernatural it actually worsens. It weakens an argument to even apply the supernatural to it. And this is the part that's contentious for a lot of people. And unfortunately, that's just, the way it is. It's just the truth. Hold on, let me finish this.
Yeah, sure.
When we talk about, like I said, like when we're talking about an explanation, we can point to kind of like a physical causation, kind of know what that is. A supernatural causation. Okay, or sorry, I'll call it a natural causation and a supernatural causation. But a natural causation we kind of point to what it is that we mean when we say natural. And the best definition that somebody who advocates for supernatural causation will say is an explanation absent the natural. And this is such a weak definition. You
have to repeat your last sentence because you clipped there. You clipped out half of your sentence, got lost.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, a natural causation can be defined. We know what this is. We could talk about like physics. We could talk about chemistry. We could talk about it's like stuff that we understand how physical things affect each other and how things happen that way. A supernatural explanation, a supernatural causation seems to be defined purely as causation absent the natural. But what is causation absent the natural? This is such a terrible definition because it actually doesn't tell you anything. It tells you what it isn't. And that's the problem. When your definition is purely to describe something by what it's not, that's not a good definition. It doesn't tell you anything. If I go over to John's house and he's got some creepy little reptile, I don't know, let's say some pet reptile of some sort. I've never seen it before, and I say, "Hey, what's that?" And he says, "Well, it's not a cat." Well, okay, what the fuck did that tell me? It told me that it wasn't a cat. Like that was it. That's not really an explanation. That's not really a good descriptor of whatever this animal is.
So
and we can see the weakness of this now.
So you're right, because based on what you just said. So what I think what you're trying to say is that when the claim is made that supernatural causation is the best explanation, essentially all they're saying is that there's no natural explanation at this point.
Exactly, which is just an argument from ignorance.
Okay. and you ran into another issue about that. Okay, that I want to just touch on, and then you can continue on. Okay, so inherently in abduction, there's a couple of problems, which we may have touched on a little bit earlier, but. If in abduction, you can never know if your list of possible explanations from which you will draw the best explanation, you can never know that your list of possible explanations is completely exhaustive. And, the best explanation may not be true if your list is not exhaustive. So what theists do with these type of arguments that Socka and Drag have been talking about is they are not compiling a list of an exhaustive list of all the possible explanations. They're basically saying, well, we don't have a natural explanation, therefore it's supernatural. If it's supernatural, it's God. And you can't infer that that's the best explanation because you're not even trying to find all the possible explanations.
Yeah, and there's a lot of problems with the best explanation. And here's a funny one too, is with a kind of a problem with abduction, conspiracy theories. Okay, if anybody here knows somebody or is totally into conspiracy theories, conspiracy theory is generally could be defined by a explanation with no abductive inferences, or just essentially just as a really bad arguments. Like if what we're looking for a good explanation or for a good abductive inferences, like the inference to the best explanation, a conspiracy theory would probably be the inference to the worst explanation. There's so many things going on.
And it's funny that you bring up conspiracy theories, since Nokasuchi thought we were going to be talking about alien abductions tonight.
Right, but you think you take a look like flat Earth. Flat Earth is a great example of this. Is that or alien abductions or anything really? Who shot AFK? Stuff like that. Is that in order for a conspiracy theory to really make sense, they have to multiply entities like crazy. So many conspiracies, so many people involved. They have to twist facts. They have to, there's going to be internal contradictions. A lot of conspiracy theories say that the government is useless, but yet they're, effective enough to create these huge conspiracies that can involve like 40,000 people for some reason. Like it's like they're not like conspiracy theories are never internally consistent. They're never simple. They assume way too much. They make way too many claims. They're not good explanations.
Well, you referred to flat Earth. How many millions of people would have to be part of that conspiracy if it was a conspiracy to hide the flat Earth? Hey, real quick before we move on, I just want to shout out to Puffalopicus in the chat. He's here just a moment ago. I did post his GoFundMe again. Again, he's woefully short on his goal to come up with the funds to bury his father, who passed away 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow it'll be. And so I just urge all of you to click on that link, help with what you can, and please share that link on social media. That helps in a powerful way as well. Go ahead, Socka, or Drag, whoever was speaking.
Yeah, I was trying to get a little word in.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Richard. Yeah,
I got a question for Count Joker Sock. If you would critique this for me, I'd appreciate it. I just wrote this while you were talking. I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're talking about. So I think I've made what is it called when you have two statements and a conclusion? Two premises, conclusion. What's that called?
A syllogism.
A syllogism.
Syllogism. Yeah.
So I've got 4 syllogisms here that I've structured, and I wonder if you would critique them for me.
Oh, I think he means premises. I think he means he has some premises for one syllogism.
No, I mean 4 syllogisms.
Like 4 separate sets.
So you have 4 sets of 2 premises and a conclusion?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind.
Go ahead, Richard.
By the way, it doesn't have to be 2 premises. Like you can have arguments that as many premises as you want.
Thanks. Someone told me I wasn't. Anyway, what do you think of this? God works with man. This is all within an internal critique. God works with man. Working negates resting. God is not resting. God is not resting. God rests on the Sabbath. God is not in his Sabbath. God is not in his Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for God. There has been no Sabbath. And then I compiled them all together with all the conclusions or all the 2 premises, the last conclusions as premises. God is not resting. God is not in his Sabbath. There has been no Sabbath.
Okay. The issue with that off the bat is that I heard, God, there is no Sabbath. Somewhere along the line too. I know. I hate doing this for the audience here. Just give me. I'm just going to write this down. Give me the premises real quick again.
Okay. Starting all the way at the top again. God works with man. Working negates resting. God is not resting. Sorry.
All right. God works with man. God is not resting. Okay.
Working negates resting. God is not resting. God is not resting.
Hold on a second. Work negates resting. Okay, that's 3.
Okay. God is not resting, which is the conclusion from the last one. God is not resting. God rests on the Sabbath.
Okay, hold on a second. God is not resting. All right. God rests on the Sabbath.
Starting with the last conclusion again, God is not in his Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for God. There has been no Sabbath. What do you think?
Okay. God is not resting, so God is not on his Sabbath. That was 5. What's 6?
I don't know what you're calling 6. Are you including the conclusions or not including the conclusions?
Well, here, hold
Yes.
on, Richard. Just do this. Just start with the first one and read that one again, and then pause for a minute. Make sure.
No, I need them all. Sorry. So I got God works with man. God is not resting.
You skipped one.
God works with man.
God
okay.
works with man. Working negates resting.
Okay, it's working negates resting. I had those in the wrong order.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought so. God is not resting. Taking that premise down, taking that conclusion down. God rests on the Sabbath. God is not resting. God rests on the Sabbath. God is not in his Sabbath.
Okay.
God, taking that down. God is not in his Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for God. There has been no Sabbath. Now, all that's biblically correct, but I'm wondering what you think of the logic of it.
Well, the formation probably needs a little bit of work for the validity of it, but I mean, I understand the basic premise there. If it's just simply that the God works with man, and therefore God is not resting. If God works with man, work negates resting, therefore God is not resting. Okay, that's valid and sound. Well, hold on, but maybe hold on a second. Yeah, we'll come back to that one. So then you start off with the conclusion of the last one. God is not resting. Right. So God is not on the Sabbath. And God, okay. Yeah, I honestly, like, just kind of looking at this, I mean, if you show me the text.
To me, it looks sloppy. I mean, I don't think it's wrong, but I think it's sloppy.
Yeah, it looks a little sloppy, but I mean, what I'm trying to get at, like looking at the premises here, is that if you're asking me to critique like what the premises are or what these are just in conjunction with the Bible, so if they're true with the Bible, so if I'm just assuming the premises are true, then
just assume the premises are true. I know that those things are in the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just put it that way. Yeah. So assuming that the premises are true, then I guess like an argument could be made for that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But I don't think we can assume those premises are true.
No,
because
it's an internal critique.
All right.
Yeah.
Because like I totally think I mean, if God's resting with man, he's not working with man. He's resting with man, right?
That would be true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and just so I'm clear, when you say an internal critique, you're saying it's a critique based on if you grant the premise that what your interpretation of the Bible is accurate. Is that?
No. That's not what has to be granted. What has to be granted is that the Bible exists. That's all you have to grant for an internal critique.
Yeah, we can't get away from the Bible exists. Shit, I wish I could.
Well,
yeah. So I'm just going to steer this back on course there for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm really trying to grasp this conversation because, like, I realize I'm out of my depth, and I am learning so much. Like I've been studying philosophy, and I have not covered this shit at all.
Yeah. So the one of the cool things with this, so like I said, is go back to the qualities of what makes something a good explanation, and I've already pointed out like there's a couple things, like problems where I think theism fails, or any type of for theism here. I'm using this as kind of a broad sense. The way that I've sort of described this before in the past is supernatural, because I think supernatural is a much better way to kind of define this, just for the sake of this illustration. If you are referring to a supernatural God or a supernatural deity or ghosts or anything that is supernatural, this is where these arguments would apply against any of those type of claims. But so we start off with obviously the falsifiability of it, okay, or the testability of it. So first off, we don't know how to test the supernatural. Okay, so any type of supernatural causation, there's really nothing you can kind of draw on for that to come to a conclusion that this was supernatural. You'd have to be able to describe some type of mechanism in which the supernatural works in order for that to be for the testability, for that to be to meet that criteria. And again, this is where any kind of supernatural claim is, going to fall short on that. The scope of something is an interesting one as well. In this one, we say that it's something that has more explanatory power is going to be stronger or preferred over something with a very narrow scope of explanatory power. Now, there's one exception to this, and this is when we actually come to concepts like God, because God is something that has all explanatory power. The scope for the explanatory power from a God is literally infinite. Anything that could be can be with God in the view there. Now, this exposes kind of like another weakness of the theistic argument is that something that explains everything explains nothing. Because when you have an explanation that explains how the world is, but then it could also explain how the world could be in every other iteration of what the world can be. It literally covers every single base. It has no power at all. Like
it's like an argument that really is making no argument.
Well, because if the world was such, like what they'll say is that if the world was like this, okay. So here's a good example, is that with and I know Dreg's heard this before, and I'm sure like other people have as well. Is they'll bring something up like the similarity in DNA, like, oh, we can tell that we're related to old world monkeys, because we share a lot of similar DNA with New World monkeys. And they'll say, like, well, hey, hold on a second. Couldn't that be explained as well by a god? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know what? We have the same DNA. He's using the same parts. That could be explained by a god. But do you know what else could be explained by a god? Having completely different DNA. Nothing in common whatsoever. If there is nothing in common whatsoever between a human and a chimpanzee's DNA, that could also be explained by God, because why would he want to use the same DNA for his creation of man that he uses for all the lesser animals? So that's also an explanation. So within the scope of explanation, you have something that explains literally every single option that you can put on the table. That's how fluid it is. But that's not a strength. It's a weakness.
Right, but you know what? Theists they're going to hear what you just said over the last 90 seconds or so. And what they are going to hear in that is that you just said their God explains everything.
Or it explains nothing.
Well, I'll tell you what they're really going to say. What they're really going to say is Darwinistic evolution also explains everything. That's what they're really going to say.
Well, no, because there's also an aspect of falsifiability to that. Like, there's a lot of different things that we can point into now when it comes to examples of evolution. Like,
well, that's why they'd be wrong. Hey, guys, I've loved this. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I got to go meet Dr. Josh. So you guys have peace. I'm going to clock myself out. Hopefully, Nock will have a link in the description if you guys are interested in what I'm doing. I'm sorry to interrupt. You guys, thank you so much for letting me sit in on this.
Thanks for coming by, Richard.
Thanks for coming, man.
I really got to go. Dr. Josh is above us for sure. Go ahead, buddy.
Mad respect, y'all.
Tell Dr. Josh I said what's up.
I will.
So we covered, testability, covered scope. What about simplicity? Like I said, we talked about the principles of parsimony. Occam's razor. This is where we get into multiplying entities. There's another part where conspiracy theorists always kind of fail. They because there has to be so many different entities involved, so many things. It's never the simplest explanation. Now, it's not to say that you can't have a complex explanation. It's just that there's more value in an explanation being simple. And so this is, everybody's heard all razors before, talked about this, and how like a perfectly natural explanation, just even the inclusion of a supernatural entity into it, is just like, all right, that's that's a huge claim, because not only are we talking about a new entity here, but now we're also asserting different types of causation in which this entity can interact with the world, as well as, especially if this is a religious, claim. There's a lot of baggage, that internal baggage that comes with any type of religious claim as well.
Could you take a moment and examine Maynard's syllogism there and see what you think of it?
This stuff's gonna have to wait for my episode on deduction, but God made weed. God said it was good, therefore smoke weed every day. So God made weed. Everything God makes is good, therefore weed is good. Would be the valid and sound argument for that one.
I give all herbs bearing seed to man. To him it shall be as meat. God is good.
Thank you on behalf of Nokasuchi for that $5 there, Maynard, and your earlier super chats. You are one of the best friends of the program.
Yeah, and Korog in the external chat, he says it right. Is I think this is like, the problem with a lot of these arguments as well, is that what is a example of design, for example. Like they'll say, like, well, humans, they have to be designed. Look at how complex it is. And it's just like, well, hold on a second. Why is complexity a sign of design?
Complexity does not equal design by any stretch.
Yeah. In fact, if we're designing things to be efficient, we make them as simple as possible.
Exactly.
Simplicity is a better example of design.
Like if God designed us, he did a really bad job.
Well, right. I saw a meme on Twitter the other day, Knock, and I forget who put it out, but it was like Ken Ham saying something to the effect that God is perfect and he made our perfect bodies, and he was wearing eyeglasses when he said it. So the guy who has bad eyes said God made us perfect. So, Drag, you haven't been in here in a while. You got anything to add to all this?
No, sorry. I had some lecture stuff to do. But no, I pretty much covered the points. That's really kind of what I had to add, is that, there are good and bad arguments for abduction, and kind of knowing the bad arguments sometimes helps people understand where not to fuck up, or how to distinguish it from, deduction or induction. Even though it might seem intuitive to folks just learn it, it may not be. It took me some time to try and get some of these things. Just like Socka earlier, I still mess up valid and sound, still mess it up. But as long as you can express what you're talking about, it's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, if y'all want to have more conversations like this, let Naka know, and we'll be happy to try and lend a voice the best way we can. And trust me, if we don't know, Ozzy or Alex Malpass or somebody else knows way more than we do about this. So
yes.
Yeah, I definitely want more conversations like this, even on my nights and not John's, because this is what I'm trying to learn right now. This is exactly the focus of my research at this very moment in time. This has been I don't know much about the topic, but I have learned a lot.
Yeah, and so maybe we can. This is another episode in the continuing series of John Learns Shit. Maybe we have to have another series, Naka Learns Shit.
Yeah, but maybe Naka should actually go to Drag's Discord server and learn shit instead of just saying, "Oh, Drag, I'm going to come to your Discord server."
Yeah, we had Ozzy in there over the last few days since he's back from his trip, and so there's some resources in there if folks want to come in. I'll pop in there for a bit, and talk tonight, but I might head back to the gym. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation has been fascinating despite some of the trolling in the chat.
It's all he has now. Unfortunately, he's
what's a pro?
He's pretty. Once somebody's lost all credibility, there's really no place where they can come from for that. And
what's a prolix explanation? Anybody have any idea? This is one of.
Who said that?
Messenger said, "Okay, maybe it's me. Press 1 if you like Sokka's prolix explanation."
Yeah, I figured that was a trap word.
It's like verbose.
Yeah.
I'm saying too much.
Yeah, I figured it was like a trap word. He was trying to use a really fancy word nobody would understand, so they'd press 1.
Yeah, whatever. He's like I said. I mean, but like, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna wrap this up because like I don't have much else to say after this. But
Well, I
when
have
it
some
comes
questions for you, though.
oh sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I finish this point and then
Yes,
any questions
absolutely.
you guys want?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you take a look at like the explanatory values or the explanatory virtues that we're kind of talking about there, when we talk about like what we're looking for when we're trying to come to this idea for the inference of the best explanation. You know, when I say the supernatural is never the best explanation, I mean it. Like there's no way in which it covers anything close to all of these or even a reasonable amount of them. They're never consistent. The scope is always too narrow or too wide. They're never simple. They're always multiplying entities. They're not falsifiable. They're not testable. That they're not fruitful at all because they generally just terminate in some types of brute facts that we have to accept without argument. And they're not conservative or coherent. They don't work with other things we know. Like the example I brought up earlier was like radiometric dating. Other stuff that we've already established and know about the world, they don't work with that. So when it comes to the supernatural explanations for something, if the reason why somebody's a theist is because they think that supernatural explanations are the best explanation, well, they're wrong. They're not. And this is like I've had this discussion before, and that when we talk about like the justification for beliefs, and we'll say that somebody is justified in believing that A is responsible for B only if there is explanatory value of A being responsible for B. Like that's what makes something justified to believe it. So if you're thinking that your theory about the supernatural provides some type of best explanation, it really doesn't. And I would say that your absent justification of that belief that. And when you're absent justification for a belief, I mean, like, what does that mean? And so, like I said, like this can get contentious even with like my theist friends here. But I'll always finish off with this caveat: is that one of the things about abductive arguments is that they end off with what they say that the inference of the best explanation is most likely true. So whatever explanation is contained within the best explanation, we'll say is most likely true. And yeah, I agree with that. But just like inductive arguments, this doesn't lead to certainty. A god could exist. Supernatural things could exist. Ghosts can exist. Those entirely possible that those things do exist. But what I'll say with a high degree of certainty is that they're never going to be the best explanation for anything. So in a discussion where someone says, well, what explains this good? God. My response is always, no.
I agree. And that's pretty much what I've taken from this conversation, is that there can be explanations for everything. What is the best explanation? And what can you rationalize the best? With the supernatural, I've often maintained that I don't have evidence for or against, but the evidence for the supernatural is actually outweighed by evidence against the supernatural, because we've had thousands of years of people claiming the supernatural. We've had how many years of everybody having a fucking personal recorder in their pocket, and we still have no visible proof of the supernatural. So while I give credence to that there is that the supernatural, there's no evidence that there isn't a supernatural, I don't fucking believe in a supernatural. I didn't really ever understand my reasoning for getting to that conclusion, but I think that you have explained very well my reasoning for getting to that conclusion. And it's just, I don't have backup to that premise that there is a supernatural.
You're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness.
Little G-Man soundboard clip there. So Socka, so I don't know if this is too big a can of worms to open, but
I don't know. I'm sorry, John. Do we not have any evidence of dark energy, Messenger, or are you just saying that?
What is he? Oh my god!
here I'll find it.
Anyway, it's in math that he can't understand.
Yeah, I think that there is evidence for dark energy. I just don't think he understands it.
Hey,
I don't even see that comment.
It's a new one. Nokasuchi, we don't have evidence for dark energy, but we believe it exists.
Oh,
Right?
I see it here now.
all claims in science are provisional.
And I'm not saying I believe in dark energy, actually, because I don't fucking know. I'm not Dragnauct. I'm not a scientist. I'm not,
Scientists.
I'm not Maddie. I don't, like I'm Nokasuchi. Like I dropped out of high school, dog.
I mean, it's like if you could literally put anything in there. Well, we don't know X. Okay, cool. That doesn't give validity to anything else. Like it's one position. I'll turn my camera off too. But there's one position on one topic, right? That's not. It doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't add credence to something else. I'm not sure really.
Yeah.
Trying to get at with that. But
well, I think he's trying to say we have faith.
Here's a fundamental understanding issue here. This is a gross conceptual issue. If dark energy exists, dark matter exists, right? How do we know that? You know that fun little equation people like to show, E equals MC squared? Yes, that's why. I'm just like, this is basic physics, man.
Yeah, and we have actually accumulated a little bit of dark matter. So I think that with that accumulation, with that actual physical evidence of dark matter, then we do know that dark energy actually does exist.
Oh, yeah. So let me just another point there. Dark energy is the best explanation. Okay, and the reason it's the best based off of the observations that we have. So there's a certain phenomena that physicists have observed, that seems to be the absence of this thing that we kind of quantify. And so dark energy just becomes the thing that's kind of holding in the space that we still need to account for. Mathematically, they've accounted for it, and they've called it dark energy, but it's kind of a misnomer, I believe. But like I said, so when they're offering that explanation, this is how an abductive argument would work. Dark energy is a result of an abductive argument, and it meets the criteria. The only thing that doesn't have is that, well, I mean, I guess you can't really go out and get yourself a bucket of dark energy. I guess maybe that's the objection. But
I don't know. Well, apparently he's just playing puppet master. He claims. That,
yeah, he's leading us down a rabbit hole.
He got us to go down the rabbit hole he wanted us to.
It's fairly easy when you have me that has no understanding of, like I'm just now starting to grasp the basic concepts of philosophy. And Socka and Drag will both tell you that they are not experts on philosophy. They're not Ozzy, but compared to me, they are. So yeah, it's very easy, Messenger, to get me down this rabbit hole because I'm paying way too much attention to chat.
Well, what's funny about this is because it's funny because this actually exposes the ignorance of Messenger reveals, because bringing up something like dark energy is a perfect example of how abductive inferences work in science. He thinks he's trolling, but his ignorance of the topic, he accidentally brought up a great point to illustrate how abductive inferences do work within the realm of science. Which is. I mean, it's funny that he did this because he was trolling, but I mean, if he'd been serious, that would be a good point to bring up. So, I mean, I guess he failed in his fail.
I see. It's actually called an auxiliary hypothesis. So we're talking about the philosophy of science. So when we're talking about evidence for something in the realm of physics, analytical logic counts as evidence. And so that's where if someone asked me, well, what's the evidence for it? If we can mathematically account for something, that is evidence. So if the trick of this was to bring up an example within the philosophy of science, an auxiliary hypothesis, then GG. I don't know. It would be better if he came in and expressed it. I mean, instead of trolled, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But I guess having, like civil discourse is too much for folks now, but I'm not surprised.
So real quick, I just want to mention again, and I'm not sure if he's still here. He was in the chat earlier. Puffalupagus's father passed. It'll be 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and his family is having a real tough time paying for the funeral. I just posted it in the live chat again. Please go over there and help him with what you can, and share that link on social media, please.
Yeah, guys. If you can, please help Puff. Very hard going through what he's going through. I went through it, and we had a tough time when my mother died. So if you guys have it, if you can help him out, it would be greatly appreciated.
So what I was going to ask you earlier, Socka, and this might be too big a can of worms to open up, but like one thing that they talked about in one of the videos I watched today is Bayesian epistemology and how it relates to abduction, or how it, under Bayesian epistemology, how abduction works. Or
Okay, or do you mean how it doesn't work?
Well, right. They talked about a lot of problems with it because, like, some of the notes I wrote here, it says, you must have prior probabilities. You can only generate probabilities from prior probabilities, and there's problems with prior probabilities because you can't assign prior probabilities to hypotheses, evidence, or the conjunction of the two.
Yeah, so this is actually a really interesting topic because so I think that a lot of people have heard of like Bayesian logic before, which is this kind of way of kind of evaluating claims based off of just probability. So when someone says something like that, I believe aliens exist because it just out of pure statistics would show that it is more than likely that aliens exist. Okay, so they're doing this kind of like a Bayesian approach. And so if you could ground that belief that aliens exist in like a type of a Bayesian epistemology, which is fine. But there's also problems with this as well. So for example, if you were to take a look at let's say an asteroid, okay, and I think this is a good example for this. I might be wrong on this, but I'm going to try to present it this way anyway. So we can say that a asteroid, the weight of Dragnauct, could hit the Earth. Okay. Now we're gonna. That's not that really extravagant claim. An asteroid, the weight of Dragnaught was 240, 250. It could hit the Earth. But then you take a look at, well, what do we know about asteroids? Well, they come in a variety of weights. In fact, I mean, like, you go across the spectrum of things. I mean, like how many, like, what could the weight of an asteroid be? Almost like an infinite number, that's but pretty high. It could weigh, let's say the drag weighs 250 pounds. It could be 250 and a half. Could be 251. Could be 300. Could be 3,000. Could be tons. We don't know. But the amount of asteroids that exist that weigh differently than what drag weighs would be an astronomical number. And so based off of that, if you're going to be putting this through any type of Bayesian analysis there, that you're approaching the point that essentially what you're saying is that it's impossible for an asteroid the weight of Dragnaught to hit the planet. Because if you take a look at the possibility of weights that could be out there, you can't even calculate these numbers. But that would be the same for any other one out there as well, any other weight. So when you take a look at them individually, then you could say that, well, there's actually a very finite chance of any asteroid ever hitting the Earth, because they all have, the same probability, which is like close to nothing. So, that there are things that fail. Like, so I don't put Bayesian epistemology as the end all kind of challenge to any type of objective references.
Well, yeah, I mean, and of course, any asteroid that started out in space at Dragnaugt's weight wouldn't hit the Earth anyway, because it would burn up in the atmosphere.
Now, I just want to point out that if I'm wrong about anything in this hangout, there's a very good chance it was what I just said, because I know of like some of the challenges from Bayesian epistemology, but not completely familiar with every single epistemic system out there to understand fully whether or not that was a kind of a good reaction to it.
So, the last thing I wanted to ask about, if you or Drag know anything about it. Obviously, me and Nok do not. I wasn't even able to watch this portion of the video, but they talked about undetermination. Like, is that something you're familiar with? Like,
undetermination. That sounds familiar to me, but I can't quite place my tongue on a definition of it. It sounds like something I've heard of recently. I just can't place it.
yeah, and I that's the only note I wrote. I had undetermination, and underneath that it was undiscovered.
Yeah, Barney's got it right. It's under determination. Under determination. Or maybe that's what you were saying all along.
I'm pretty sure I wrote it down because there was a couple different kinds of them.
Okay, so I had to look it up real quick. Okay, so think about everything I just said about the asteroid. Okay,
right.
That is an example of under determination. Okay, is that we know that asteroids are probably going to hit Earth. But the probability of them of various sizes hitting is all equal, that it doesn't warrant a belief that any particular weight would eat. So like there's essentially they'll treat every single one of those claims as equal, or like empirically equivalent when we take a look at like the range of possible weights that it can be. And when we say that because they're empirically equivalent, then that there is no reason to believe one over the other, and there's no reason to believe any of them essentially. So you'd have to reject kind of like the notion that an asteroid's going to hit the Earth ever.
Well, then the note that I had under determination was undiscovered hypotheses make best explanation subjective, but aren't all best explanations. It's all subjective, isn't it? It's because it's not empirical, it's not deduction.
Well, no, not all. So the idea with the best explanation is that it is objective. If you have a standard of what qualifies as a good explanation, what we're doing is that we're providing a metric in which one can measure good explanations from bad. So, I mean, this goes back to the point I made at the beginning. We talked about like the door dinging fairies versus the possibility that someone just opened their door and hit your car. That we know that one of those is an objectively good explanation, one of them is an objectively bad explanation. And so if we can agree that objectively good and objectively bad explanations do exist, well, then the explanatory virtues is what we would label as the standard in which we measure and assess them. But under some of the challenges that go out against deductive arguments, it would be that at best, there would be a subjective analysis to some rather than an objective. But I don't think that applies to every single explanation.
So is Priapos is the god of gardening, isn't it? I'm remembering correctly, or the god of
Priapus?
yeah.
Oh no, that's that's the god of something, all right.
What is it? What is Priapus? So I'll tell you in medical terms, a priapism is when you have an involuntary erection that will not go down. Sometimes by If it
the
lasts
cause
longer
of,
than 4 hours, seek medical attention. That kind of thing.
yeah.
Okay. So Priapus is the god of fertility, then.
You could say that.
All right. So I guess we're gonna wrap this up. Again, help Puffalophagus if you can, please. You're gonna, be hearing that out of my mouth and until we get him straightened out. So please help him. I want to thank Nokasuchi for allowing me to do this once a week. And just to real quick before we give everybody their final thoughts, I just want to thank a lot of people here in the live chat. Yes, Messenger, thank you for coming by. You were always entertaining. Ashley Gotch, my fellow moderator on this channel, thanks for stopping by. Stupid Horror Energy, big friend of the show, big friend of the channel, I mean. Knock, I know, appreciate you very much. Tony Designs, he's always in the chat, posting everybody's links. We love you for that, buddy. And Mass Pig showed up. I am sorry, Wilson. And Korag, and I know Maynard was here. Thanks for your super chats, Maynard. And let's just go right. And anybody I missed, I do apologize. We love all of you.
We had a really good showing tonight. Thank everybody for showing up.
And so let's just go right on down the line here. Dragnauct Sylvas, you got any final thoughts and shills you want to tell us about?
Oh wow, it's muted. Yeah. So got some pretty fun stuff coming up. The Magic Sandwich Show. Ozzy, Hogtie Champ, and DPR Jones are going to be on there. And we have one mystery guest that has been on the show in the past that people have not seen in years. So there will be an opportunity for people to kind of come in and interact with them and challenge them, not just to say hi, but actually challenge. You want to challenge Ozzy? Something he said about epistemology that you don't agree with? We'll challenge him. Hogtie said something about I don't know, literally anything in biology. And if you just want to argue with DPR about Trump, feel free. But so that's going to be happening around 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yeah, that's on the 11th on the Magic Sandwich Show.
And Socka Count, you got any final words or anything you want to shill?
No, I think I've spoken a lot today. My apologies for that. I appreciate you guys bringing me on, give me a chance to kind of talk about this stuff. Like I said, I find these topics like fascinating, and I still consider myself a layman, even though for some, just consider me a layman. I am. These conversations are just so neat to get into because you get kind of evaluation of how we think about things, and concepts that we at one point in time might have been so sure of, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit of that doubt to you in understanding them. And so I encourage people, like, if you find this stuff fascinating, like, there's a lot of good stuff that you can read on this. If you don't have time to read, a couple YouTube videos out there. A lot of times, like, and I've said this before, like, when it comes to people that get in discussions or arguments with theists, what I really like about talking like things like abductive arguments is that they're pretty solid, in the sense that you're not going to hear a lot of really good rebuttals or replies from theists, especially those that don't go out and do their own research or anything. So it's these are good points to bring up because it opens up a nice avenue of discussion as well, and highlighting maybe some of the flaws that they might have and how they approach things, if they're capable of that amount of introspection. So,
and I just want to point out to everybody that's that's how Socka responds when he answers no to the question, do you have any last words or final thoughts? But I'm just busting your
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. Yeah.
So, Nokasuchi, you shilled a number of things at the beginning of the program. Please re-shill and give us your final thoughts on this conversation.
Well, yeah, like like I'm fairly stupid because I totally I don't know, maybe it's just the way when I talked to you, John, yesterday, and you said Richard was coming in, and I was preparing for my conversation with Richard about how God is a biological alien, that I just, when you told me the topic and my complete lack of understanding of philosophy, I'm trying to learn, that I just totally thought we were talking alien abductions tonight. I even went and researched certain alien abductions and how we could debunk them. So, but I'm glad that we had this conversation, because this conversation actually falls into the lines of what I'm researching, what I'm studying, what I'm trying to become smarter on. And I learned a lot tonight. And I think I did learn that abductive reasoning is a way, it's a tool that I could possibly utilize in the future for future combats with Abrahamic theists, especially. So, I'm really glad that we had this conversation. I'm really glad that Socka was here to kind of lead the way so I could kind of get an understanding what we were talking about. And I'm so glad that Drag came in and added to that, because honestly, Drag and Socka are the people that I look to when it comes to philosophy. They're what inspired me to actually start studying it 6 months after I told them I'd start studying it. That being said, I do have a lot of stuff going on. Check it all out. I'll be making announcements on Twitter and all of that. What I would like to most focus on is that I'm really open to having conversations with everybody, even if I'm in the dark. Just like tonight, I found this conversation fascinating, even though I was in the dark for most of it, because it's just not a line of topic that I'm very familiar with yet. I'm trying to remedy that. But anybody out there, if you want to come on and if you want to be a part of the conversation, please get a hold of me. There are numerous ways that you can do so: email, Discord, Twitter, even my Facebook page. People have contacted me through there. Please get a hold of me. I'm really trying to get some different Christian voices, especially when it comes to having conversations about Christianity. Tired of talking to Sky Out. Really, really, really tired of talking to Jill. So
welcome to our world, man. Eventually they get tired of getting embarrassed. That's why Aaron Benton doesn't go on any shows anymore.
Yeah, and it's hard to get them on now, Drag. Yeah, because they come here and they've been embarrassed, not just by me, but by you and Socka and everybody else that comes on.
Let me talk a little bit about that. Now, when I say embarrassed, it's not that I do anything or anyone else does anything. They're embarrassed for themselves. Like I might have been asked wrong about dark energy. I've been studying biochemistry, doing biochemistry literally all day. And I just sent off a message to Dr. Antoine Brett to make sure that my understanding is right, because I might be wrong, but that's not embarrassing, right? It's just, I don't study this shit. So when a lot of these guys get on here, they get on here with the purpose, thinking that they're going to, I guess, teach somebody something, or they're going to, have this image. And so when they don't do as well as they expect, they don't want to put themselves in a position to learn from it. And so they'll just rather avoid it and stay in the side chat and troll and make little snide comments, and then not expose themselves to anything to correct themselves, because that takes time. It takes, it actually takes a lot to go through, make mistakes, acknowledge it, fix it, and then not make those same mistakes. And it's just not for everyone. And it just so happens that a lot of the people in that category just so happen to be theists.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that's why people actually get intimidated by me, is because, like, I'm not afraid to make mistakes and I'm not afraid to be stupid. I will totally walk into that trap with my head held up high. And then I will look at the camera right in the eye and say, yeah, I fucked up. If you can't do that, you're going to have a lot of problems when you're having conversations, because you're going to be fucking wrong sometimes. You just are. So yeah, I'm really looking for other people to come on. I've been working on it. But the problem also is like when they say they'll come on, they don't. Christians, defend your shit. You know, I'm not the smartest apple in the bunch. You'd probably have a better chance with me than others. Come do it. And I say that jokingly a little bit because I'm smart in my own way. I just don't conform to the normal way of doing things. But yeah, please come on, have a conversation. I'm really glad that I finally got back in a stream with Dragons and Socka, my friends. It's been too long. So good to have you guys here on John's stream to where I could be a part of it. And I've learned so much. I just want to thank both of you. And Richard Madsen. I'm going to go check out his stream with Dr. Josh as soon as we're off here. And after shows on Discord are coming back next week, not tonight.
Awesome. You talk about people going on and embarrassing themselves and then not being around. And I just want to point out when it comes to Jill, it's not that he feels as if he's ever embarrassed himself because he has no self-awareness whatsoever. But like when you spoke about how he didn't show up to your stream where you invited Christians to come on and beat on you, he didn't show up for one reason and one reason only, because there was a female moderator. So, he doesn't come around because of his misogyny and his bigotry.
But he married a woman, John, so he possibly can't.
Right, you can't be a misogynist. If you marry a woman, you can't possibly be a misogynist, right? Yeah, I just love that argument. It just shows his ignorance, each and every time he makes it. So anyway, hey, thanks everybody for stopping by. I wanted to answer you. So yeah. Richard ended up getting invited because the original topic I came up with was we were going to talk about what truth is and what constitutes facts, and then Socka, changed the topic, and I wasn't about to uninvite Richard, so that's I caused that confusion in you, Nok. Sorry about that.
It was just like I was prepping for Richard at that time, and I was like prepping for aliens. So you said abduction, and I'm like, fucking hell yeah.
Well, the truth is out there, I hear. So I will get links.
I feel bad that we haven't given Naka his alien stream now.
We're gonna have it.
Well, it's so funny because at some point in the conversation, when Socka was explaining, some part of this, I was, I think he was explaining about good explanations and bad explanations. And I was going to even make the argument, like I was going to say something like, well, yeah, like, he was talking about conspiracy theories. So somebody wakes up in the morning and their ass hurts, and then a conspiracy theorist, the first thing they would think of is, I must have been abducted last night and probed. So
yeah, it could have been that you got drunk and had wild, crazy sex you would have never had before.
Right. So I'll get everybody's links in the comment section. Magic Sandwich Show and Drag's regular channel, and Richard's channel, Puff's GoFundMe. That'll all be on link comment by tomorrow morning. And I'll also put a link there to the video I watched earlier today about abduction. It was very interesting. It's only about a half hour long, and it's worth a look too. Next Wednesday, I want to put this out there. Next Wednesday here on Nox, Mr. Macabre, you may have seen him around in different hangouts. He's going to be here. And
I'm so glad he's coming back. It's been a while since he's been here.
Well, and what he wants to argue is, we had a lengthy chat in DMs today. He wants to make the argument that with the impeachment investigation and other factors, the Dems are guaranteeing Trump a win in 2020.
Oh gosh, I hope I'm off for that. I want in on that shit.
Yeah, and the reason I'm mentioning it is putting it out there. Whoever would like to come in and tell Mr. Macabre why he's wrong, or if there's somebody else that wants to come in on his side of the argument, please let me know. You can. I will put my Twitter link in the pinned comment, and you can reach me that way, or leave a comment under this video, and me or Knock will see it.
Dude, that's going to be a good show next week. Yeah, that's going to be a good one, John.
Yeah, I think it will be too. And now here's the funny thing too about Mr. McCobb. He is left leaning. Okay, so it's not like he's some wackadoodle far right conservative, or for that matter, wackadoodle far left person. But
yeah, I would label him left leaning, but still moderate. But yeah, he's not some crazy right wing dude.
And he's also a Christian, and he's also an Aussie. So we'll be having a stream at around 7 or 8 o'clock, and it'll be 8 or 9 a.m. for him the next day in Australia. So be looking for that, and get a hold of me if you want to be part of that. So again, thanks to Nokasuchi for allowing me to do this. Like I said, you'll find me back here. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. I mentioned this on Nokasuchi's channel the other day, and I mentioned it on my channel this past Sunday, that I am jettisoning the part of my channel where I was going to have, in addition to the one-on-one conversations I have, I was going to maybe have 2 people on that were at odds with one another and mediate that. I haven't done that thus far, and I've decided I'm not going to do that. The other part of my channel is going to be having my channel be a place for ex-Muslims to come and tell their stories, and about, why they left their faith, and the harassment and badgering that they go through, and quite frankly, the threats to their life that they go through from leaving the Muslim faith. And I have asked, and let me add to that too. It's more than time now for the broader skeptic community, the broader skeptic and atheist communities, to accept ex-Muslims into our
I 100%, 1000% agree, John. I just got, we both met Faye recently, and becoming friends with Faye, I absolutely adore her. I've come aware of this other side of our community that I wasn't aware of before, and it's been there. Zara K is a person I've been aware of, just never really paid much attention because I get so wrapped up in myself. Guys, these ex-Muslims are facing 1,000 times more of the persecution than we are facing, and they need our support. And they are us. So just to back up what John is saying, that is going to be a focus for me moving forward as well. Zara K, Ali, and Faye the Most Gracious had a wonderful stream earlier today. You can find it on Zara K's channel. It's about blasphemy. I recommend all of you going and checking that out. Very informative, very highly intelligent people, know what the hell they're talking about, and a great addition to our community.
Right, and so what I'm going to be doing here, and it probably won't get started until November, is I usually do once a week on the Amateur Conversationalist, and so 1 week I will have a one-on-one, like I've been doing, where we'll talk to someone from the community and talk to them about something that maybe the community doesn't know about them, and then the other week it will be a ex-Muslim podcast. And I have asked Faye the Most Gracious to co-host those with me, because I feel as if I need someone that's an ex-Muslim there, because I don't know everything about all this.
I don't think you'll go wrong with Faye being a co-host.
Right. Well, and she has committed to being able to do that once a month, because she has so much other stuff that she's doing. And then we're going to find another ex-Muslim to co-host with me when she's unable to be there. And like I said, be looking for that sometime in November. Like Nokasuchi was just saying, I mean, I was introduced to all this but from Topic Thunder, who's a great YouTuber as well. She introduced me to
really good person. I really enjoyed Tropic Thunder.
And no, Topic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder. I'm thinking of the movie. I'm sorry.
Right. Never go full retard. And I'm sorry I used a banned word on Nokasuchi's channel.
It's relevant to this.
So, I mean, I lost my place.
Sorry.
But so, and like Nokasuchi alluded to, I mean, I've gotten to know a lot of ex-Muslims, through Twitter and from talking to Faye. I've learned a lot about what ex-Muslims go through. And as Nokasuchi says, atheists in the United States and other Western countries can talk about the persecution they get from Christians, but it pales in comparison to what ex-Muslims go through. They can be killed for being atheists. I don't remember the last time Christians were out on a rampage killing atheists.
It's been 100 years or so.
Well, thousands of years probably, but
well, I mean, the Salem witch trials is the last one I could think of, and that was about 150 years ago.
So, but be looking for that. Again, thank you everybody for showing up. And as Nokasuchi says, be the conversation.